There's a deeply unsettling detail in the game that's easy to miss, but once you notice it, it changes everything. Every dead body you find looks exactly like James. This was also the case in the original, but with the remake and better graphics, this is much more noticeable. Every corpse has the iconic James jacket, blue jeans, and leather boots that James has throughout the game. Now, there could be two reasons why this is the case. You might think the developers reused James's model for these corpses to save time, avoiding the need to create separate body models. But that's not the case here. The corpse in the Toluca prison canteen is different from the others. It's implied that Eddie killed that person, so it could have been Eddie's manifestation. If the devs wanted to reuse assets, they would have probably used that corpse, so that not everyone catches on that these bodies are the same. What's odd is that even though James was surprised to find out there are monsters in this town, he never comments on finding these bodies, which obviously resemble him. There's no guarantee these bodies look the same to everyone. Eddie might have seen his own body in every corpse, just as Angela might have seen hers. That's because Silent Hill doesn't present a single objective reality. It shapes the world around the mind of the person experiencing it, turning their thoughts, guilt, and fears into physical horror. This is proven by Masahiro Ito's tweet, where he says this when talking about Abstract Daddy. Only Angela knows what she sees, her Abstract Daddy. James, players, and I can't see what she sees. We are on James's side. And who can say Abstract Daddy, which James sees, is the same as hers? So that means everyone sees a different reality in Silent Hill. There is more proof of that, but I'll talk about it later. However, these bodies could be manifestations of James' desire to be punished for killing Mary, but James is constantly repressing his memories of killing Mary. That's why he doesn't react to these bodies, because his conscience is constantly repressing any interaction that may lead him to realize what he did. After all, he is running away from the truth. The second reason why we see James dead everywhere ties to a very popular theory, which is the loop theory. The basic premise of the theory is that James is trapped in an endless loop of trying to find Mary. The bodies we see are those of James, who has died in different places during his search. Now, I don't believe in every theory, but this one is interesting. There's a particular part in the game where Pyramid Head throws James onto a fence, causing that fence to break. It is said that the reason the fence is broken in the remake is that James was already thrown on it in the past, implying that James from the original Silent Hill 2 had a different experience from James we control in the remake. It's far-fetched, I know, but the one piece of evidence that really makes this theory believable is the secret message uncovered through the collectible photos scattered throughout the game. This is another amazing fact as well, which I was saving for this exact theory. There are 26 collectible Polaroids, which for the longest time had no real meaning. But a Redditor by the name of Dale Robinson uncovered the secret message tied to these photos. I'll leave a link to his Reddit post so you can learn more about this mystery. But how it worked was that these photos were of random things, along with some writing at the bottom. This was the case for every single one. If you count the number of things shown in the picture, like the number of lights, the number of windows, and more, and trace it across the text on the picture, you would get a letter. Doing this with all 26 photos got you the secret message, which was, "You've been here for 2 decades." I like to think this is just a message from Bloober Team that has no other meaning than that you have been playing this game for 2 decades, and now you're playing the remake. So that means you've been in Silent Hill for a long time, but people swear this means that the loop theory is real. It's weird because it seems like the Bloober Team intentionally left some clues and mysteries that can prove the time theory. Like the fact you can find old maps of Southvale and Silent Hill, the ones from the original, all with crosses on different paths and markings on things previous James interacted with, meaning some other James has already been through this part. There's also a Morse code that emits from the TVs in the remake, which, if you decipher, will translate to again and again and again. Now, this is something that isn't a reference to the original, so that would mean either it's part of a mystery, or Bloober Team put it in the remake because they like the loop theory. It fits so well with the thought that James is in an infinite loop, and this could be a message to himself or to the next James that will come to the town. Furthermore, Masahiro Ito tweeted that all endings in Silent Hill 2 are canon, which is very weird, right? How can all endings be canon when there are endings where James commits suicide? It's confusing, and I'm sure your brain hurts thinking about it. That's why I don't dive into time theories. If you saw the Nostalgic Games Facts video, the same thing was said there. And you're not supposed to find logic in time-related theories and gameplay, because there isn't any meaning behind them. And most developers only put it there because it's cool. Time theories create so many paradoxes that you can never actually prove your point. There are many Silent Hill 2 loop theory videos out there, so if you're curious, go check them out. Some of them are really interesting and do raise valid points. I won't say that I 100% believe in the loop theory, but there is some good evidence to back it. The only problem I have with it is the fact that it's unclear what happens to Jameses who leave the Silent Hill, like in the Maria ending. I mean, the only explanation for this would be multiple timelines, but then again, even multiple timelines will have 1,000 holes. Maybe in the future we might get a clear answer, but in the meantime it's a pretty good theory to think about, that's for sure. Hearing these speculations might make you wonder what's real in Silent Hill, but beyond the mysteries, it's the small, subtle details that I believe are the heart of the game. In both Silent Hill 2 Remake and the original, you can hear someone whispering when you enter room 209 of the Blue Creek Apartments. For the longest time, no one had any idea what the whispers were saying. It all sounded like gibberish. But you know how Silent Hill is. There's always some meaning behind these ominous sounds and subtle details. So the fans did their best to somehow translate what these whispers mean. There were a whole lot of speculations and theories, but no one ever got a real answer. These whispers don't trigger in every playthrough. You can enter room 209 and not hear this, and even if you reload a checkpoint, it won't work. You have to restart the entire game to maybe get a chance to experience this. It's uncertain what triggers this sound effect, but from what I've gathered, it has something to do with the first few minutes of your gameplay, long before you enter the room. Fans swear the first part of the whisper says, "See my dead wife," and I actually hear it too. Given the context of the story, this could have been the truth. It's the second part of the whisper that no one really understands. Some people speculate it says, "Do some needling," which I don't think would mean anything, but the most famous speculation is that the second part says, "Come home, do some laundry," which, again, I just can't hear or make out at all. The third is beyond understanding, and it literally sounds like someone mumbling, but people make it as if it says, "Take her to the car to save some space." Keep in mind, this audio is from 2001, and we had no confirmation on whether Mary's body was inside the car or not. So the most famous theory at the time was that she was inside the trunk of James's car. I guess people were just hearing whatever they wanted, trying to force some kind of connection between the trunk theory and this whisper. Because the real reason is a lot less ominous, and it's actually pretty funny. Even now, a lot of people don't know what this audio is. It's actually a stock audio of a whispering male that's part of a sample city called the Nightingale Voice Box, specifically track 66, Whispering Male. It's literally just gibberish. The man isn't saying anything about a dead wife, laundry, or a car. It's just that the people were so determined to pull some kind of eerie meaning out of the whisper that their minds filled in the blanks on their own. In a sense, people also became delusional like James, which is pretty ironic. And I'll admit, I'm no different. It was one of my favorite sounds from the game, just because of how ominous it sounded. I was sure some Stanley Coleman type lore would be behind it, but I guess not. This isn't the only case of hearing whispers and strange noises in Silent Hill 2. There are many more, one of which can be found in the Toluca prison. In the original Silent Hill 2, you can hear a prisoner shouting ritual in a very monster-like sound near the cells. What's interesting is that if you aim at the cell or the area close by, your game auto-locks on an invisible enemy. If you then shoot or hit the enemy with a melee weapon, you can see blood coming out of it. If you hit him a few more times, James's character will aim at the ground, as he does with the other enemies when he knocks them to the ground, meaning you knocked the invisible prisoner or killed him. The same effect also happens if you hit him enough times with a melee weapon. In the remake, however, you can still hear a prisoner shouting ritual, but you can't hit him or lock onto him. Though one thing I really like is that in the remake, the cell where this prisoner supposedly died has satanic signs on the walls. It serves both as a reference and a really creepy touch to the game. And what do you know? This sound is also the same as the whispers from Room 209. It's taken from the same stock audio collection. Is he really saying ritual, or is it just a form of auditory paridolia, where your brain tries to make sense of ambiguous noise, filling in gaps to create recognizable sounds? I'll let you decide, because I clearly hear ritual, and I know I'm not the only one, because there have been so many theories and speculations on who this prisoner is and why he is saying ritual. Is he a member of the Order? I guess we'll never know. The Silent Hill franchise is known for hiding creepy moments in bathrooms. Silent Hill 1 had one, where players could hear someone crying behind a bathroom door. Silent Hill 3 had its own, where knocking on a stall in the other world and walking away causes the door to swing open, revealing a blood-soaked toilet. And of course, Silent Hill 2 has one as well, though it's much easier to miss. In the Toluca prison, if you go into the bathroom and knock a few times on the furthest stall, then walk towards the exit, you will hear a very unsettling scream of a woman. How many times you need to knock is totally random. That's why most people miss this, because every time you knock, James will give the same response. So you might think this is just a locked stall, nothing more. You could be lucky and experience it in the first knock, but the chances are low. But you don't need luck in the remake, because it only takes one knock to trigger this scream, and in the remake, the scream is much more frantic and terrifying than the original. It honestly feels like whatever's inside the stall will come out and kill you. The game has even sneakier ways of messing with you. In the prototype, Mary says a line that almost went unnoticed, but it actually survived into the final game in a hidden form. In a prototype build of Silent Hill 2, when James finds the radio and kills the first enemy, a cutscene plays where James hears Mary's distorted voice through the radio, trying to tell him something. But in the prototype, during that distorted radio call, Mary asks James, "Why did you kill me?" You can even read this in the subtitle of that certain frame. Many fans are glad this was removed from the final game, as it was the main twist. Hearing that line and seeing the subtitle so early would have completely ruined the story. But what a lot of you don't know is that this line was never removed from the final game. You can still hear it, but the subtitles don't give it away, which is why no one notices it. Now that I've told you this, if you look at this scene from the final game, the subtitles still kind of give it away, but you will only pick up on it if you know what the line is supposed to mean. When you enter the Lakeview Hotel, it's almost perfect. And by perfect, I mean the hotel itself is in pristine condition. The walls are in good condition, the paintings are all on the walls, and the windows are fine. But as you progress through that part of the game, the hotel slowly disintegrates. The sheets on the walls are ripped out, the furniture is destroyed, and there are signs of fire. There are many takes on why this is happening. Some say it was because James learns the truth there, and the town is slowly falling apart. Others say that James enters the other world once he watches the tape, which is why everything is destroyed. But the real reason is far more interesting. Masahiro Ito confirms that James didn't enter the other world after watching the tape. He was already in it when he entered the hotel. You see, the Lakeview Hotel had burned down sometime after James and Mary left, which was confirmed via the official Japanese guidebook, Lost Memories, Silent Hill Chronicles. It states that before the events of the second game, the hotel was completely burned down. So that means the hotel in pristine condition is just a product of James's imagination, who thinks the hotel is still intact. The reason the hotel starts to disintegrate is that once James watches the tape, he comes back to the fog world, where this building has already been destroyed. Lakeview Hotel is full of surprises. Its decaying walls hide a very creepy detail, and a mystery of Room 208, which is one of the most underrated mysteries in the Silent Hill universe, but it's definitely worth checking out. There is a chance you may hear someone crying when walking past Room 208 of Lakeview Hotel. It's unclear who this is, but this could be a symbolic representation of James's suffering and sadness, or it could be a ghost of someone who died in the hotel fire. There's not a lot of information, but sometimes filling in gaps in lore with your imagination can lead to an amazing horror experience. It's in both the original and the remake, though I like the remake version more because it genuinely sounds like the new voice actor of James crying. This isn't the only weird thing that happens in Room 208. In the Woodside Apartments, if you go to Room 208, retrieve the handgun and come back, you'll see a dead person sitting in front of a TV. This dead person has the same but slightly modified version of James's model, though you can't see his face. It's heavily implied that this is James himself who was dead on the couch. In the Blue Creek Apartments, if you attempt to enter Room 208 and walk away, you'll hear someone rattling the doorknob, as if someone or something is trying to get you. And finally, the door outside the Labyrinth prison cell, where you find Maria's dead body, has the number 208 on it. So what does all of this mean? Well, like many things in Silent Hill 2, there's no definitive proof of what this means. Yet again, we are left with our own imagination to try and make sense of why Room 208 is like this. If you notice, the game is subtly foreshadowing what happened to Mary through Room 208, which could possibly be Mary's room number when she was in the hospital. As I said before, the dead man in front of the TV in the Woodside apartment was James's character model, and the scene looks very similar to the ending of the game, where James sits on a chair and watches the tape on the TV. The dead man could be a manifestation of James giving in to his suicidal thoughts after learning what happened to Mary. Or this may be how James had spent the last 3 years when Mary was in hospital, just watching TV and not caring about his wife. The Maria death scene in Labyrinth is very similar to how we see Mary on the deathbed, and since she is the image of Mary made from James's thoughts, this could be a foreshadowing of Mary's fate. These are just subjective thoughts. People have different interpretations of Room 208, but these are the ones that somehow make sense to me. Even though the 2024 remake is one of the most well-received remakes ever, people initially were not on board with Konami's decision to let Bloober Team handle it. There are several reasons, but the main issues were always the same. They can't handle Silent Hill 2's psychological horror, their games are poorly optimized, and there is a lack of subtlety in their games. Therefore, they won't be able to remake a game that relies on all 3 of those elements being executed perfectly. It seems like a pretty unnecessary take now, doesn't it? Considering the Silent Hill 2 remake is probably one of the best remakes ever made, that means Bloober Team did a great job. But before the release, the concerns weren't without reason. Bloober Team created Layers of Fear in 2016, which was inspired by Silent Hill PT, a playable demo for an unreleased Silent Hill game that utilized looping corridors as its primary means of horror. I loved Layers of Fear, and a lot of others did as well, but was it the most engaging or the most horror game I've played? No, because there wasn't much to be scared of. The horror elements were lacking, a complete opposite of Silent Hill 2. Then comes the subtlety issue, which is pretty simple. That the Bloober Team has no subtlety in their game and tells the player way too much without leaving anything for them to figure out. On its own, it's not much of an issue. A lot of studios make their games the same way, but with Bloober Team, who's supposed to remake a game that requires piecing together meaning behind every monster, every location, and every line of dialogue, Bloober's approach works against everything that made the original special. And the final issue was that the Bloober Team games weren't optimized well, so they could have messed up with the Silent Hill 2 remake optimization, which, to be honest, they did kind of mess up. But it's not much of an issue, at least for me. So you can see where this hate was coming from. While they were good at making walking sim horror games, the horror element itself wasn't as strong as Silent Hill 2, and their storytelling wasn't on par either. In an interview with GameSpot, Bloober Team director and producer Jacek Zaber said, "They made the impossible possible, and it was a bumpy road because of all the hate on the internet. The pressure was big on them and they delivered. It was tough for those couple of years before release." A significant portion of the backlash also stemmed from another reason, something that many fans still take issue with today. While Bloober Team is known for heavily borrowing ideas and inspirations from other media, they themselves don't allow smaller studios to use their assets or concepts, even when those ideas weren't originally theirs to begin with. Let me explain. Layers of Fear is inspired by Silent Hill PT. Their 2019 Blair Witch is a continuation of the Blair Witch movies, so of course there are many references and inspiration. Similarly, their 2017 The Observer is inspired by Blade Runner, and features a protagonist whose name and face are based on Rutger Hauer. There are many more references and inspirations as well, but since they love using other media's references, many people assumed they would let small developers and other big studios use their ideas as well. However, that's not the case here, because in 2016, Bloober Team filed a patent for the dual world mechanic, meaning anyone who wants to implement dual worlds, where the players could control a single character through different views, must ask permission from Bloober Team. I mean, why would they even do that? It's one of the reasons why the studio received so much hate. When they announced that Bloober Team is developing the remake, I wasn't opposed to it, because no matter how many problems games developed by Bloober Team had, there was one thing I was always a fan of: the environment in their games. The surroundings and the atmosphere in their games have always attracted me, and so I thought, with the help of Konami, Bloober Team could really pull this off, and I think it's safe to say they definitely did. Just recently, Bloober Team also announced that they will be remaking Silent Hill 1. Something I'm really looking forward to because that game had a pretty tragic story, but most importantly, I want to see them remake the Lisa Garland death cutscene, which was my favourite part from the first game. Since the remake has been released, most people's perspective of Bloober Team has changed. Fans love what they did with the game, the extra options, the extra dialogues, and even the extra places to explore, which I will get to later. Bloober Team collaborated with some of the original Silent Hill 2 developers to work on the remake, and it's absolutely one of the reasons why the game is so close to the original. Masahiro Ito, the designer behind monsters and creatures from the original game, returned to ensure the monster redesign and movement felt faithful to the original Silent Hill 2. Similarly, Akira Yamaoka, the composer for 2001's Silent Hill 2, also returned to recompose classic soundtracks like Promise, Letter, and even the main menu theme, with some minor changes. The remake soundtracks do sound a lot better, even though they are almost a one-to-one recreation of the original, mostly because of the new sound equipment. What's interesting is that Masahiro Ito wasn't there just to recreate the creatures, but also to ensure that Bloober Team didn't make them too monster-like. The team initially wanted to change the bubblehead nurse designs to look more gruesome, so that the game could deliver an even scarier experience, but Masahiro insisted he wanted to make the monsters look tragic and sexualized to fit the theme of James's psyche, which is why the nurses ended up having a similar look to the original, with only noticeable change being that in the remake they have stockings on, because Masahiro received a lot of feedback saying the design used in the original was too revealing. Masahiro also made sure to make Pyramid Head somewhat more menacing than the original, and you can definitely see that with his first appearance in the remake compared to the original. Of course, modern development helped with lighting and the environment in the scenes where Pyramid Head appears, so the remake does make him look more terrifying. A fun little bonus fact about Pyramid Head is that Masahiro Ito regrets making this character. It's not because there is something wrong with it or that it gives Masahiro nightmares. It's because Pyramid Head has been misinterpreted in movies and other games as a generic bad guy, whereas he was only supposed to be used in Silent Hill 2 because of his meaning in the game. The original devs that collaborated on the Silent Hill 2 remake wanted a totally different game than the faithful remake we got, and we have to thank Bloober Team for that. Masahiro Ito and Akira Yamaoka were looking to change a lot of core gameplay mechanics and sections of the game. Matoe Okamoto, the series producer, said in an interview, "Game creators don't want to make the same thing twice. I think that, as the original creators, they had many parts where they wanted to change. It was thanks to the opinions of Bloober Team, who are huge fans of the original game, that the remake is highly faithful to the original. The original creators wanted to deliver a fresh experience to the audience, whereas Bloober Team, who are big fans of the original, knew that fans want a faithful remake and not a reimagining. The game would have been very different for sure if it were up to the original creators. They most likely wanted to change the lore and even the creatures, so that they could bring you a new game, using Silent Hill 2's name. Bloober Team, being big fans of the original, is why Konami picked them to develop the remake over Japanese studios. Matoe Okamoto said in an interview with IGN that he thought Bloober Team's love for the original game is a bit excessive, which is why they vetoed any drastic changes suggested by original members. Hexadrive was the only major competitor to Bloober Team for the Silent Hill 2 remake development rights. They created their own demo for the project, but were ultimately rejected because it was graphically inferior to Bloober Team's Unreal Engine 5 showcase. Konami also believes that Bloober Team was better suited for a large-scale project and wasn't fully confident that Hexadrive could handle it. As a result, they went with Bloober Team instead. However, this interaction did lead to one upside for Hexadrive. Konami later brought them on to help develop Silent Hill, the short message. The combat reveal trailer released by Konami a few months before the game's release wasn't loved by fans either. The trailer focused only on combat, which isn't the first thing people think about when talking about Silent Hill. However, it wasn't the combat that looked bad, it was the way they presented it. With heavy music in the background, shots of James bashing heads, and constantly showing firearms that made it look more like an action game rather than a psychological horror. To put it very simply, it was like watching a reimagining of Resident Evil 4, and of course, fans hated it. They thought that Bloober Team didn't catch the spirit of the original game at all, and made the game way more action-focused. And to be honest, it really felt like that at the moment. Bloober Team studio head, Pietra Barbiano, responded by saying that Konami is in charge of marketing, and that the trailer doesn't accurately represent the game they're developing. Talking about combat, there were a lot of troubles handling combat in the remake. The devs had to completely redo it because of the over-the-shoulder camera position, which made the combat too easy since players will now have more camera freedom and be able to spot enemies from far, whereas in the original, camera angles were somewhat fixed, and spotting or even shooting an enemy was a challenge. This meant devs had to find new ways of making enemy encounters scary or challenging again, by using the environment and implementing AI changes. Some of these changes were the flying figure monsters now have grab attacks and uninterrupted charge moves that must be avoided. Mannequins are more agile, faster, and can dodge your attacks, and sometimes hide in corners to spook the players. Bubblehead nurses are more aggressive and more responsive towards sound cues. These changes were not just made for the regular enemies, but also for the bosses. Some areas had to be changed, or some new attack patterns had to be introduced to make the boss fights more interesting and compatible with the new camera angle. Take the first Pyramid Head boss battle as an example. Fans loved it in the original Silent Hill 2, and I did as well. The room was small and claustrophobic, and the camera angle was awkward and limiting. You couldn't just run around. All you could do was shoot and watch as Pyramid Head slowly advanced toward you, which was very, very terrifying, especially for a young kid like me at the time who wasn't even allowed to play horror games. But with the remake and a new camera angle, this fight would not have worked, or it would have been the easiest fight ever. Because first off, having a claustrophobic room with an over-the-shoulder camera would have been very awkward, so they had to expand the location. Secondly, Pyramid Head in the original was very slow. Even now, if you go look up his boss fight in the original, you can see that he moves towards James very slowly, and even when he's about to attack, you have 3 or 4 seconds to react. So that means with a new dodge ability and an easy-to-control camera, this fight would have been easier than fighting the nurses. So what was Bloober Team's solution? To make Pyramid Head more aggressive and faster, while also completely changing the boss room location. In the remake, he has several new attacks, and even when walking, he can catch up to James really quickly. Now this next bit is subjective, but I think the remake boss fight is better because it gives you a feeling that players are fighting a stronger than normal enemy. Whereas in the original, even though it was definitely a scary experience, you are ultimately just shooting and waiting for the game to do something. However, I was pretty let down by the fact that they completely dumped the water staircase scene, but I guess some stuff can only be experienced in the original. Bloober Team also gave the Fleshlip boss fight a similar makeover for the same reasons. The room needed to be expanded for the new camera, but what a lot of fans who have only played the remake don't know is that in the original, you get to fight 2 Fleshlips at the same time, whereas in the remake, you get to fight only 1. There are several other changes to the boss fight as well, such as having to fight Fleshlip on the ground and the fact that it can transform into a spider-like creature, features that weren't in the original. There is a pretty cool reference to the original boss fight from 2001 in the remake. At the end, when you defeat the Fleshlip, a cutscene plays where the second Fleshlip grabs you from above, which is a reference to the grab attack used by the original Fleshlips. It's an amazing detail. But how about we shift our focus to an underrated sub-scenario that, to this day, many people don't even know exists, and it's also my personal favorite to talk about. You've played Silent Hill 2, and maybe recently completed the remake, but did you know about the Silent Hill 2 bonus expansion, Born from a Wish? It's a very underrated DLC that I strongly recommend you play at least once if you haven't already. Now, the reason why most of you have probably not heard or played it is that it's only exclusive to Silent Hill 2 Director's Cut and Silent Hill 2 Restless Dreams. The main game did so well that it overshadowed this DLC completely, even after almost 3 decades. You play as Maria, who has just woken up in Silent Hill, contemplating suicide because she's lonely, scared, and doesn't know her purpose. So then she goes into the town looking for any person who may still be alive, and as you progress through the game, you will enter a mansion, where you finally meet someone named Ernest Baldwin, the owner. Meet may be a strong word here, because throughout the DLC, you only communicate with him through a closed door, and Ernest refuses to open it for the majority of the playthrough. Anyway, of course, Maria is happy she finally talked to someone, and although Ernest doesn't like her being there at first, the players later find a happy birthday letter from his deceased daughter, Amy. When we give it to Ernest, he finally opens up a little, giving us some insight into who he is and who Maria really is. But before I tell you that, I need to go over the ending because some things won't make sense otherwise. Ernest then asks Maria if she can get him a bottle of white liquid from the apartment next door, which, after playing Silent Hill 2, we know is white chrism, which is also used for the rebirth ending in the main game, where James attempts a ritual to resurrect Mary. But why am I mentioning that? It's worth noting that in both Born from a Wish and the original Silent Hill 2, you find the white chrism in the same place, apartment 105. This could be a possible link from the developers between the two games, or as I like to think of it, it's background storytelling. telling you that Ernest also wanted to perform a resurrection ritual to bring his daughter back. This is further backed by Maria's dialogue, where she asks Ernest if he truly believes this will work, referring to the ritual. Later on, Ernest also says that this was the only item he couldn't get, meaning he had the other items needed for the ritual, just like James needed some items for the rebirth ending. After we give him the bottle, and after a few dialogues, Maria opens the door, only to find out that the room is empty. Ernest wasn't alive. He was a ghost, trapped in this mansion, attempting to resurrect his daughter. The only items in the room were the birthday card, a pair of gloves, and some books. The ending cutscene is one of the most unsettling and probably my favorite in the Silent Hill franchise. As Maria examines the empty room, a realization suddenly hits her. The game zooms in on her, blocks all sound, and shows you Maria as she realizes she isn't real. Ernest at one point in the DLC says, "Maria, so you must be... That's why you could see me." Knowing that Ernest was a ghost, this line means that he knew Maria was a manifestation of James's thoughts. She was made by Silent Hill to either help James or steer him away from the truth. Another line that stands out is when Ernest asks Maria if she believes in fate, to which Maria replies, "What if she does?" Then Ernest says that she should know James is a bad man. Maria then, for a few seconds, stops to think and says, "Yeah, I know," even though she hasn't met James at this point. The town is filling her mind with a purpose, which is that James is bad. Ernest then says that he's looking for the you that isn't you, because Maria is an image of Mary made from James's thoughts. And there is a lot of value in this dialogue because when James first meets Maria, he mistakes her for Mary. Just as Ernest is about to reveal Maria's purpose and who she really is, Maria cuts him off, saying, "You don't really know anything, and you're making this up." That's when she opens the door and finds the truth. The final cutscene shows us Maria walking in the streets of Silent Hill. She tries to shoot herself, but stops. Either because she now understands her purpose, which is to find James, or she knows that she is a manifestation and cannot be killed. The cutscene shows us Maria calling out James's name, and as the screen goes black, we hear a dialogue from the main Silent Hill game, which I'm sure you're probably already familiar with, when James sees Maria for the first time, mistaking her for Mary. Finally connecting the expansion with the main game. All of this content happens under 1 hour, and it's crazy how much detail there is. But it's pretty sad that this expansion wasn't included in the remake. I would have loved to see Bloober Team's take on Ernest and his story. We know his daughter died when she fell out of a window 10 years ago, on his birthday. But the DLC doesn't explain how Ernest himself died, so we're only left with theories. Since I've been doing so many deep dives in Silent Hill lore recently, the most plausible explanation to me is that Ernest is part of the Order, and that his ghost is stuck in the mansion because he's waiting for someone to save him, or release him from this world. I highly recommend you go watch the 2 hours of Nostalgic Game Facts video. In it, we go over what the Order is, who Lisa Garland was, and who Stanley Coleman was. Both of whom had connections with the Order, and both of whom were stuck in this world, or at least their ghost was. Ernest is somewhat similar to those two. We can tell he is possibly a member of the Order by his dialogue. "Maria, the gods are here, you know it too. You were born in this town." As to why he's there, it could be because of his sudden death, or by suicide. From an article found in the Silent Hill 3 subway, which was also mentioned in the Nostalgia video, it reads, "The souls of those who died, suddenly by suicide or accident, don't realize they're dead. Sometimes they stay put and haunt that particular place." Throughout the DLC, the only thing we know about Ernest is that he loved his daughter so much that he was willing to perform a forbidden ritual to bring her back. It could be that after his daughter's death, Ernest went into depression and killed himself, which is why he's bound to the mansion. And we know he wasn't just bound to the room he was in, because during one of his dialogues, he says that the white liquid was the only thing he couldn't get before he could no longer leave this house, meaning he was moving around freely before. This could be one of the reasons why he's dead. The second one is quite simple, that the Order killed him, just like they did with Stanley. Stanley also knew he was a ghost, but he could still interact with Heather. This would explain the red sign outside the mansion, which reads, "Keep out of haunted mansion." It's clear from the first interaction Maria has with Ernest that he likes being alone and doesn't want people to show up in the mansion. If you think about it, it's the same as Stanley, who despite being a ghost, was able to leave letters. Now this is just what I think happened, and feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments below. There is a reference to all of this in the remake. If you go to Baldwin Mansion with Maria, where James can find White Chrism, you can then have a dialogue with Maria, where she says this place brings back bad memories, which is clearly a nod to Born from a Wish. If we include Silent Hill Born from a Wish, the original Silent Hill 2, and the remake, you get a total of 9 different endings. 6 of these are recreations of the original with either updated visuals or different dialogue, but all of them have the same meaning. 2 of these are entirely new, and 1 is the ending from the DLC. There are a lot of do's and don'ts to achieve each ending, but since that part can be a bit boring, I'm gonna leave a picture with all the necessary interactions for the endings in the background. The Leave ending, which is sort of a good ending, even though nothing good ever happens in Silent Hill. In the end, James meets Maria, who appears disguised as Mary. Because Maria is a manifestation shaped by James's own mind, she resembles a younger, healthier version of Mary, the woman he loved before the illness consumed her. But in this ending, James accepts his sins and knows he needs to move on. He can't stay with Maria, since she's not really Mary. In the end, we see James leaving Silent Hill with Laura after finally confronting his sins. The remake adds an extra scene where James gives Mary's letters to Laura before they leave Silent Hill. In the final shot, they walk side by side, much closer than in the original, where Laura kept more distance from him. The Water ending. We see James in his car, talking to himself about he can't live without Mary. James is burdened by his guilt and can't continue to live with it. He looks back at the backseat of the car and drives off into Toluca Lake, committing suicide. The Maria ending. In this ending, James chooses Maria over Mary. He refuses to change, refuses to confront his guilt, and rejects any chance at redemption. Maria gives him Mary's letters, but James won't even read it. Instead, he fully accepts Maria, the younger, healthier image of Mary that he created to escape the truth. The ending makes it clear that James is living in denial and delusion. The really interesting part in this ending is that as James and Maria walk towards their car, Maria coughs, and James tells her, "You'd better do something about that cough." A subtle indication that the cycle will repeat. Maria will get sick, and James will resent her, resulting in the tragedy happening again. The Rebirth ending. If you collect 4 specific items, you unlock the Rebirth ending, which we talked about earlier. In it, you see James on a boat with Mary's body. He talks about how God is still in Silent Hill, and can grant powers that defy even death. The ending itself only shows James on the boat, but it's clear that this ending is showcasing James's obsession with Mary and how he wants to bring her back to life by performing a ritual. The Bliss ending. This is one of the new endings exclusive to the remake only, and it's very sad. To unlock it, you need to have White Claudia, a drug, in your inventory. Just before you play the videotape in the Lakeview Hotel, drink White Claudia to trigger the Bliss ending. Instead of the usual reveal that happens when James plays the videotape, the Bliss ending shows James and Mary having a lovely vacation together. There is no cough, no illness, just a happy memory of James and Mary, which was created due to the White Claudia. The final shot shows us the chair where James usually sits and watches the tapes in the other ending, but this time it's empty. This implies either that James got lost in the hallucination he created using the White Claudia until he died, or that he simply vanished from Silent Hill. It's heartbreaking that the only way James could escape his guilt was to create a hallucination of himself and Mary. The Stillness ending. Stillness is the other ending exclusive to the remake. It's a variation of the In the Water ending. It plays out the same, the lines are the same, but this time, James hears Mary's voice and feels her hands comforting him. James asks her if she will wait for him, to which Mary says, "I've always been waiting for you." The final part of the ending is the exact same as the water ending, where James commits suicide, but this time he made peace with his fate and had a sense of closure before dying. The dog ending. The dog ending is a joke, which shows us Mira, the Shiba Inu dog who has appeared in multiple Silent Hill games, controlling the entire nightmare James faced. James kneels in shock as he realizes that everything he's faced was because a dog was pressing some buttons. It's nothing more than comic relief. And I don't know about you, but this is peak Silent Hill. And last but not least, the UFO ending. And I love the UFO endings. They show up in every Silent Hill game and they're always a blast to experience. What makes them even cooler is that some of them actually connect in the series lore, like how the Silent Hill 1 UFO ending ties into the Silent Hill 3 UFO ending, and even links back to the original Silent Hill 2. There is a bit of a difference between the remake UFO ending and the original one, but both are funny in their own way. In the original, James meets Harry Mason from Silent Hill 1 outside the Lakeview Hotel. They both ask each other their iconic questions like, "Have you seen a little girl around here? Short, black hair?" The one Harry used to repeat in Silent Hill 1, to which James replies with his own iconic question, "Have you seen my wife? Her name is Mary." James then gets zapped by aliens and gets taken over to the UFO by Harry and the Grey Alien. In the remake, the scene plays out the same way and even uses the same music. But instead of Harry Mason, the original Silent Hill 2 version of James Sunderland appears, complete with his classic textures and graphics. He tells the new James that he's the real original one, and that the remake James has been a clone all along. The new James is then zapped just like before and taken aboard the UFO, this time by the original James and the Grey Alien. I know how confusing this is, but it's honestly one of the best endings in the Silent Hill franchise. Throughout the game, James thinks that Mary died 3 years ago. This line is also in the opening cutscene, so a lot of you probably think the same, but that's not it. That's just a story James made up so he can feel less guilty about killing Mary. In reality, she died a few days ago. We know this because of the letter that she wrote for Laura's birthday, which James read in the Lakeview Hotel. In the letter, right at the end, Mary wrote, "Happy 8th birthday, Laura, your friend forever." And after reading the letter, when James asked Laura about her age, she said that she turned 8 a few weeks ago. So that means she didn't die 3 years ago, but she died a few days or weeks ago. Now, if she died a few days ago, then, well, where's her body? It's been a speculation that she was inside James's car all this time, in the back seat, but we never really got a confirmation for the longest time, until Masahiro Ito himself confirmed it. She was indeed inside the car. Her body was in the back seat, covered with a blanket. In the remake, if you use camera mods, you can actually see this blanket, but it's not really obvious there is a body or not. This also explains why in the water ending, James looks back at the back seat before committing suicide. And similarly, this could be the reason why in the Stillness ending, Mary is sitting in the back seat. Definitely a creepy detail, that's for sure, but that's what I love about Silent Hill. It takes years to uncover even the smallest details. While we're in the starting part of the game, there are a few fun details that I feel like were missed by most players. The car that James has is the same one that Jasper Gein has in Silent Hill 4. It has the same color, same model, and even the same nameplate. a California registered license plate 000TH2. Is there a connection between James and Jasper? I can't say for sure. There isn't anything connecting the two except the cars and that both are mentally unstable. In the same area where you first get control of James, if you don't head down the intended path and take the left road, which leads out of Silent Hill, a trophy named No Turning Back Now will unlock. It's easily missable, but it's an interesting achievement. If you play the game or know what happens, then the name for this achievement makes so much sense. Talking about taking the intended path, when going down it in both the original and the remake, if you have your music and ambiance turned off, you can hear something stalking and following James. At first, it sounds like footsteps behind you. As you progress, you hear growls from a monster. In the remake, this whole interaction is a bit more subtle, but the original one is very noticeable. I love what Bloober Team did with the first Pyramid Head encounter cutscene, and there's also an awesome detail in the remake that you might have missed. The original cutscene is, of course, iconic. The way Pyramid Head slowly walks towards James, those unsettling, twitchy movements, but the moment where James shoots him kind of undersells the entire scene. Pyramid Head reacts like he's taking heavy damage and about to collapse, which takes away from the overwhelming, unstoppable presence the cutscene was building up. In the remake, however, this isn't the case. He slowly walks towards James and just watches him, looming and menacing. Even when James fires, Pyramid Head doesn't flinch. He simply stares back at James, reinforcing his role as an unstoppable force and giving the character far more presence and intimidation. During the new cutscene, you might have noticed something. Pyramid Head does this weird and awkward animation where it almost feels like the game glitches. At first, I thought this might have been some kind of reference to the original, but no, it was something more interesting. It's after this confrontation that James enters the Otherworld, and in the Otherworld version of the same room, you can see that there is a big slash on the closet James was hiding in. Of course, from Pyramid Head's weapon. There's no real answer as to what happened, but it's clear that this is from Pyramid Head attacking the closet. The main speculation is that maybe there's a different timeline where James died at the hands of Pyramid Head, but this isn't the case. Pyramid Head isn't supposed to kill James, but to guide him towards the truth. I think this might have been a message from Pyramid Head to James, that even if you hide, he can always catch up to you. He knows where you are at all times, and he will take you towards the truth. This is such an amazing detail, and to think I walked past it 2 or 3 times. This is the case with a lot of things in the remake. It adds to the iconic scenes from the original, and you might have noticed that a lot of things that happen in the OG have a different location in the remake, but since Bloober Team devs were big fans of the original, they made sure to leave treasures from the past for the OG fans. Scattered throughout the game are glimpses of the past, which are references to the original game. Now, there are 26 of them in total, but I'll mention the ones I like the most, and I think are the most memorable ones. If you walk past the ranch and head towards the block tunnel surrounded by wooden planks, you'll get a prompt to interact. This is one of the first glimpses of the past, and it's the exact same location where James finds a radio and encounters the first lying figure in the original Silent Hill 2. The location is a bit different, but if you played the OG, you will instantly recognize this place. It would have been even cooler if there had been a dead lying figure inside the tunnel, but I guess that would have ruined the first moment James sees a monster later on. I mentioned earlier that Bloober Team moved the first Pyramid Head boss fight to a more spacious location, but that doesn't mean they completely removed the iconic flooded stairs. In Blue Creek Apartment, if you finish the clock puzzle from room 212, you can go to the staircase, where the original Pyramid Head boss fight happened. Interacting with the dead lying figure next to the stairs will trigger a glimpse of the past. Although the stairs aren't flooded this time, it's still a pretty cool reference. If we were to fight Pyramid Head here with a new camera angle, it would have definitely been a bit awkward due to the small size of this entire area. And is it just me, or is this area even smaller than in the original? Anyways, if you go inside Pete's Bolorama, you can find an almost eaten pizza. Interacting with it triggers another glimpse, and James comments, "This town is full of monsters. How could someone just sit here and eat pizza?" This is a very funny reference to the original Silent Hill 2, where Eddie can be seen eating pizza, and James says the exact same dialogue. A pretty cool detail about this bowling alley is how Maria's behavior changes between versions. In the original Silent Hill 2, she tells James he can go inside alone because she hates bowling. In the remake, however, she has no problem coming in with you. James even reassures her that it's okay if she wants to stay outside, an obvious reference, but Maria pushes back, asking why she would stay outside at all. If James doesn't want her there, he can just ask. This isn't a glimpse of the past event, but it's an amazing subtle nod. Maria's classic clothes from the original also have a reference in the remake. If you visit a room at Jack's Inn, room 108, you can find Maria's classic clothes hanging in the closet. What's even cooler is that if you unlock the door and let Maria in, she will pick out her old outfits and ask James if she would look good in them. And finally, my personal favorite, if you go to the roof of Brookhaven Hospital, you can find a broken fence. It looks as if someone incredibly powerful hurled another person straight through it. Sound familiar? That's because it's a direct reference to the original Silent Hill 2, where Pyramid Head throws James onto a fence on the roof of Brookhaven Hospital. I've compiled some amazing details that are subtle and may not be as significant as the ones we've already covered, but all of them are really interesting and can even change your perspective on the game. Laura is innocent. She hasn't committed any major sins, which is why she can't see any monsters or anything wrong with Silent Hill. For her, it's just a normal abandoned town, if any abandoned town is actually normal. It's widely believed that she hid inside Eddie's van, which is why we see her in the town. Laura must have misunderstood Mary's final letter to her. In the letter, Mary says that she is now going to a quiet, beautiful place. Laura must have thought this quiet, beautiful place was Silent Hill, because Mary and Laura used to talk a lot about this town, when in reality, Mary was talking about the afterlife. This is why Laura was so shocked when James told her that he had killed Mary. The white van at the start of the game belongs to Eddie. While there is no confirmation, the messy interior and the soda on the dashboard imply that Eddie came to Silent Hill in that vehicle. In the original FMV for the game, Eddie and Laura can also be seen sitting next to the same white van. James's character model will look more and more tired as the game progresses in the remake. At the start of the game, James looks fresh, and his clothes are clean, but as the game progresses, you will notice stains on his clothes and tiredness on his face. The tiredness is most noticeable in scenes after James watches the tape. The scene where he tells Laura about what happened to Mary is the final stage of this tiredness. James looks as if he hasn't slept for a long time, and all the confrontations with his sins are taking a toll on him. Whenever you save your game, James looks directly at the camera, but after watching the tape and before confronting the final boss, if you save your game, James will nervously look away from the camera. He tries to make eye contact, but can't. It's possible this is because James can't face you, the player, after learning what he has done. At the Jack's Inn parking lot, if you save the game while Maria is next to you, she asks James if everything's alright. Because for her, James just stared at the trunk of a car for no reason. She can't see the save point as James does. There is a mental health poster in Silent Hill 2 that has symptoms of a poor mental condition. Without examining it, you can read on the board that one of these conditions is feeling of worthlessness or guilt, but when you do examine it, James's mind erases the word guilt. Another sign that his mind is repressing these thoughts. In the movie theater, there is a quick frame that you may have missed. If you stick around the theater and watch the white screen for some time, a frame of the final tape, where James is seen suffocating Mary, can be seen for a second. You really have to slow the footage down to see this tiny detail. You can read Mary's letter for most of the game, but when you try to read it towards the end, the letter is empty. It's because the letter itself was a delusion of James. Guy Seehey, the voice of James in the original Silent Hill 2, has a pretty cool story about how he landed the role. He was originally just taking his daughter to her audition for the role of Laura. While waiting, he spotted the script for James and asked if he could audition for the main character instead. A few months later, he got the call confirming that he had been selected. Though his daughter didn't get the part, she was still supportive of her dad playing James. With a camera mod, you can see that Angela's nails are bitten in the remake. It's a sign of anxiety, depression, and a coping mechanism for emotional distress, which was caused by years of abuse from her father and brother. Props to Bloober for this amazing attention to detail, and props to the people who just love going out of their way to find new stuff. There's a similarly subtle detail from the Bloober Team when it comes to James's addiction to alcohol. James is an addict. He says this himself when you interact with alcohol bottles in Heaven's Night. In the remake, this detail is much more hidden. But if you notice James's body movement when Maria offers him a drink, it's clear that he's trying his best to resist. When exploring the Blue Creek apartment, you can come across a black silhouette in one of the windows. It's believed to be one of the residents who once lived here, but there's no proof. It looks more like the Mary we see in the tape, but that's just my thought. The cutscene where James meets Angela in Rosewater Park starts normally, but ends with Angela being scared of something behind James. Through her dialogue, it's obvious that it's either her father or brother, though what a lot of people don't know is that she wasn't just hallucinating. There was actually something behind James. If you turn off the music and the ambiance, you can hear someone walking towards Angela and James. It's very unsettling with all of the music off, and considering her traumatic past abuse, she was probably seeing some kind of monster rather than a human.
Please. You shouldn't be here.
The reason James couldn't see anyone was that this was Angela's manifestation and not his. In the basement of Brookhaven Hospital in the remake, you can inspect a boiler, which has this URL written on it, heatforgettechnologies.com. If you go to this site, you will see a picture of James standing next to the same boiler, with Mirror the dog spinning on the right side of the screen. If you click Mirror, the website will emit the inventory sounds from the original Silent Hill 2. If you flash your torch on Maria's face, which is pretty rude, she will raise her hand and cover her eyes. And if you do it a few more times, she'll get angry and say, "Are you trying to blind me, James?" Other than the again and again messages from TVs, some have a different code that translates to, "Why did you do it, James?" These TVs are the ones found in Woodside Apartment Room 213, Brookhaven Observation Room, and Jack's Inn Room 106. While it's never clear what disease Mary had, the remake hints towards it. In the Green Pharmacy, you can find a receipt that has a few fictional medicines, which are pretty expensive to be honest. These are Relevmid, Berylmin, Zalprazanax, and Amantalimed. Now, these aren't real medicines in real life, but they are based on real medicines, which are used for blood cancer, anxiety, and acute myeloid leukemia. Throughout this video, I've talked a lot about the changes between the original and the remake, but the biggest difference is James himself. His character feels significantly upgraded in terms of emotional expression and empathy. I mean, don't get me wrong, James was always written this way in the original too, but the way he delivered his dialogue often felt hollow and emotionally distant. This wasn't a flaw, it was intentional. The original developers clearly wanted James to come across as passive, detached, and so absorbed in his own thoughts that he struggles to genuinely connect with others. In the original game, James occasionally offers words of kindness to characters like Angela and Eddie, but those moments rarely feel sincere. There's almost no emotion behind them. It often feels as if James believes he's somehow above the others, which is especially clear during the knife scene with Angela, where he defensively says, "No, I'm not like you." This version of James lives in a constant state of delusion, barely acknowledging the pain of others and showing little genuine concern for anyone but himself. Remake James is still delusional, but he's portrayed as far more empathetic, emotionally aware, and caring. He shows concern, speaks more softly, and reacts more naturally during conversations. He still carries that same belief that he's different from the others, when in reality he's just like them, but he expresses it in a much more human way. He's also far less awkward socially. This is especially noticeable in his first interaction with Eddie. In the remake, the camera focuses on James's face, allowing us to clearly read his expressions, something the original cutscene didn't add, since the camera stayed behind his back for most of that interaction. When Eddie asks if they can leave together, original James responds plainly and without emotion. Remake James, on the other hand, visibly hesitates, shows discomfort, and takes a moment before answering. Even small moments, like how both versions say, "Be careful," highlight the difference. In the remake, James adds subtle body language and hesitation that suggest he genuinely feels bad for Eddie. These kinds of changes appear in nearly every cutscene. Bloober Team also added extra dialogue and scenes specifically to reinforce this more empathetic portrayal of James. Why I'm saying this is because the remake presents James in a way that makes it harder for players to fully grasp how deeply corrupted he really is. He shows emotion. He tries to stop others from hurting themselves. He appears compassionate and morally aware. Yet beneath all of that, he's still a man who killed his own wife. A man who resented her because she could no longer fulfill his desires. The remake makes it hard to grasp how much of a monster James really is. By this point, even if you haven't played the game yourself, you can probably tell that everything in Silent Hill is a manifestation of the person's thoughts. What James is experiencing is not what everyone else is experiencing. James sees a town engulfed in fog because his brain is clouded and his memories are not clear. Angela sees a town that is surrounded by fire. Her dialogue during the fire staircase scene confirms this, where she says, "For me, it's always like this," after James comments on how hot the area is.
For me, it's always like this.
Her version of Silent Hill is fire because of the abuse she suffered from her dad and brother. Furthermore, she doesn't have the same monsters as James either. Her version of the monsters are most likely distorted variations of her brother and dad. This can be proven by the Masahiro quote I talked about earlier, that the abstract daddy we see isn't how Angela perceives it. To her, it's her father, which is why she asks James to tell abstract daddy that she'll be good in the cutscene before the abstract daddy boss fight, even though to us, abstract daddy is just a monster. Eddie's version of Silent Hill is the complete opposite of Angela's. He experiences a town trapped in freezing conditions, reflecting how coldly he was treated by society and by his bullies. Now, there aren't any dialogues that suggest this, but there is an interesting detail that tells us exactly this. Firstly, his final fight takes place in a freezing meat locker, which does hint towards the kind of Silent Hill Eddie has. But you're right, this isn't really proof worth banking on. But the second detail is much more interesting, and something that might have slipped your radar. During my research, I was constantly playing the remake and watching different playthroughs, and I noticed something. Eddie's breath is always visible. It's as if he's in a colder condition all the time. I initially noticed this during the theater scene, where Eddie was seen casually eating strawberry ice cream. But because he was eating something cold, I thought it might just be something the devs added for that scene, even though I'm pretty sure that's not how it works. That's why I looked it up on the internet, and there were tons of people commenting on the same thing. Every single Eddie scene from the remake has this detail. Whenever he talks, there will always be cold breath. The scene where James meets him for the first time has this, the theater scene, and of course, in the final confrontation as well. I mean, if that's not cool, then I don't know what is. Literally. Anyways, I think this is why they must have removed the iconic pizza scene from the theater, and instead of pizza, they gave him ice cream. Plus, this may be something you couldn't pull off in the PS2, without it being super obvious. Honestly, it's probably my favorite detail from this video. As to what kind of monster Eddie sees, it's pretty obvious that he sees the people who bullied him throughout his life. There's an interesting dialogue from Eddie just before the final fight where he says, "How many times do I have to kill you?" Which could mean that he keeps seeing the same person, or this person or monster might be his version of Pyramid Head. Now that I've set the basic premise of what Silent Hill is and how the monsters work, you might be wondering what each monster from James's Silent Hill means. Every single monster you encounter has some kind of connection to James's psyche, but they're deeper than you might think. The very first type of monster we encounter is the lying figure. It's meant to represent a patient writhing in agony, a manifestation of James's suffering. They're supposed to be Mary on the deathbed, hence why they look like corpses and why their upper body resembles a body bag. The animation where it looks like they're trying to escape the body bag is a symbol of Mary's pain as a patient. This is confirmed by both Masahiro Ito and the Lost Memories book. The early designs for the lying figure are very interesting. They were focused more on a BDSM appearance. The first design had red stockings, red heels, and a straitjacket instead of a body bag, and they were also supposed to have a mouth, which allowed them to nourish themselves by feeding on corpses. The second design was a body bag and was very similar to the final result we got in the game. The only difference was that the body bag was much darker than the pale skin we got in the end. I have no clue why they were changed or how they planned on implementing these designs into the game, but I think what we got in the end makes the most sense, given all the context of the game. And their walking animation was actually inspired by one of Masahiro Ito's co-workers, who was walking with his hands in his pockets, and from a distance, it looked strangely cool. The next enemy type is the mannequin, which I really dislike in the remake because of how they dodge or appear at the worst moments. There's just something unsettling about how they walk. They're a manifestation of James's natural urges and desires, but since he refuses to remember what he did to Mary or his memories are incomplete, the enemy itself is also incomplete. James represses having these sexual thoughts. It's a shameful act to think of when your wife is fighting for her life, which is why the movement of the mannequin is similar to these thoughts. They hide awkwardly, run away sometimes, and strike you when you don't expect them. The cool thing about the mannequins is that they weren't even supposed to be an enemy type. Masahiro Ito made them specifically for the Pyramid Head kitchen scene, but I guess one thing led to another and, well, we got what we got. The Mandarin is a creepy enemy that hangs on ceilings and mesh gratings with the help of its suction pad-like arms. Their legs are practically useless because they are bound to always hang. You may see them land on their feet in the remake, but only during the Lakeview Hotel fight, where they might launch an attack on you, then stand up on their feet and go back to hanging onto the ceiling. Most of the Mandarins are seen beneath steel gratings, with nothing but pitch darkness below them. If they fall, they drop into nothingness, much like James's psyche, which is also hanging on by a thread. If he loses control any further, he too risks falling into that same void. They have a mouth which symbolizes the mouth of Mary, verbally abusing James, similarly to what Mary says in the Maria ending. Mandarin has a really cool design, but it was definitely underused. The remake does do some justice by putting it in the Lakeview Hotel as a boss fight, replacing Abstract Daddy from the original, who made no sense being there anyway. I feel like the designs of Mandarins and closers from Silent Hill 3 are very similar. It's possible the closer was inspired by the Mandarin, with the designer wanting to revisit and expand on a creature they felt was underused in Silent Hill 2. The iconic bubblehead nurses are a representation of Mary's suffering as she died at James's hands. They're about the same height as Mary, dressed in nurse uniforms with blood-stained vinyl covering their faces. You can say their clothing is a bit provocative, because that part of the nurses symbolizes James's sexual deprivation when Mary was in hospital. Unlike his sexual thoughts we talked about during the mannequin part, these are less repressed and more openly expressed. Their swollen heads are a representation of Mary's swollen head under the pillow as she died, and you may even notice a baby face towards the bottom part of their face, which could be a manifestation of James and Mary's wish to have a child. The part that absolutely creeps me out and is confirmed by the creator himself is that the weird and creepy twitching animation these nurses do is them trying to get rid of the vinyl that covers their face, much like how Mary was suffering and struggling under the pillow. Originally, Masahiro Ito was planning on giving the bobblehead nurses bloody IV stands as a weapon, but this was later changed to steel pipes as an homage to Harry Mason from Silent Hill 1. What's more is that a lot of players might confuse the name, thinking it's bobblehead nurses instead of bubblehead, which is a common misconception because of how the nurse twitched their heads, exactly like the bobblehead toys. But in reality, they're called bubblehead nurses because their heads resemble large translucent bubbles, with some kind of liquid continuously pulsing inside. At one point, devs were even planning on having these bubbles burst when a player shot at them, but I guess that would have made it too easy to defeat. The sad thing is, even though these nurses are a manifestation of James's thoughts, they appear in other Silent Hill games as well. It kind of takes away the point of the Silent Hill town, which shows you enemies based on your own thoughts. This is the same case with Pyramid Head as well. He has been overused in many other Silent Hill media, and as I mentioned at the start of the video, Masahiro Ito regrets making Pyramid Head. I vaguely explained why he hated it, because I hadn't explained who Pyramid Head is, and why Pyramid Head is only iconic because of James. Pyramid Head being in other media makes no sense, because Pyramid Head is the manifestation of James's guilt and punishment. Deep down, James believes he needs to be punished for what he did to Mary, giving birth to Pyramid Head, who, throughout the game, forces James to accept the truth. There are a lot of interpretations of who Pyramid Head is supposed to be. Some say that the great sword he carries is a manifestation of James's guilt, which is why it's so heavy. Others call him the antagonist, but is he really? Sure, he looks creepy, and in the remake he's even scarier, but throughout the game, the only thing Pyramid Head does is lead James to the right path, to the truth. During the kitchen scene where we first encounter Pyramid Head, it's clear that he knew James was hiding in the closet. If he wanted, he could have just killed him right then and there, but he doesn't. Later in the game, when Pyramid Head throws James off the roof, he could have easily killed him, but he just throws him in the direction essential for James to learn the truth. These are the reasons I don't think he's a villain at all. He was someone important for James to learn and accept his sins. The only person who is constantly trying to distract James from the truth is Maria. And as it turns out, she's the only one that Pyramid Head keeps killing. I assume he does this again and again for only one reason, so that James can reach the end without being lost in his own mind. If you look at it this way, the ending cutscene where James accepts his sins and the two Pyramid Heads kill themselves, it makes a lot more sense. They've served their purpose, guiding James onto the right path. He's more like a dark angel than a personification of punishment. This is why Pyramid Head only makes sense in Silent Hill 2. Every other media shows him just like a typical bad guy, which takes everything his character is built on and completely dismantles it. And our final monster, Fleshlip. Fleshlip is the easiest to explain of all the monsters. He is a representation of Mary on a deathbed. He has lips on the underside which serve the same purpose as the Mandarin lips, a symbolism of Mary verbally abusing James. There's a lot of cut content from both the original and the remake, but I want to end the video by focusing on the most disturbing and most fascinating of them all. The most disturbing content that was cut was definitely the audio from different scenes, and both the original and the remake have their share of cut audio. The original Silent Hill 2 was supposed to have Mary's suffocation audio, and you guessed it, it was supposed to be used when James watched the final tape. I can see why the audio was cut. It's unsettling and disturbing, even for Silent Hill standards. If you're easily disturbed by unsettling audio, I suggest you lower the volume of your device. I was going to play the audio only, but if you pair it with the scene where James kills Mary, it's even more messed up. If this had stayed in the game, it would have completely changed how we see a lot of things, especially James. Even knowing now that he's a deeply disturbed, selfish man, this audio pushes it much further. It makes you question what kind of monster could continue killing someone while hearing them suffocate like that, especially when that person was someone he once loved. The original wasn't the only game to cut disturbing audio. The remake also has a few of them. There's a cut audio that was supposed to play when James attacked Fleshlip in the remake. Fleshlip was supposed to scream out James's name in Mary's voice. And since I already went over what Fleshlip was supposed to be, this audio makes a lot of sense. But you can see why it was cut, mainly because it kind of gives away the twist. And second, because it's really disturbing. Now, personally, I wish they still kept it in the game. I know it's really disturbing, but it wouldn't have been exactly like that. Maybe it wouldn't have been as creepy to hear because of all the surrounding sounds during the boss fight, but I think it definitely would have been a cool addition for a New Game Plus playthrough, when you know what the twist is. We hear Angela's father's voice during the abstract daddy fight in the remake, but it's hard to make out what he's saying, especially since most of the dialogue that was supposed to be used there was cut. What we got in the final game is what you can call leftovers. The restored audio is only interesting if you have the context of Angela's backstory. It just gives us more insight into the abuse she suffered in the past.
You leave? Special? There's nothing. No one.
There is another cut audio featuring Angela in the remake, which has her crying hysterically as she says, "I'll be good." It's unclear where this audio was supposed to be used, but what I think is that they were planning on making a cutscene where Angela kills her father, and this is her response afterwards. There's an "I'll be good" line before the abstract daddy fight in the game, but I just don't see her crying like this in any of the scenes. The letter Laura gives to James, which is then read in Mary's voice in the remake, was actually cut content in the original Silent Hill 2. People have found Mary's unused dialogue from the original, and for some reason, it sounds beautiful, and even better than the remake. If you really loved the analysis and hidden details from this video, then I highly suggest you watch the 2 hours of nostalgic game facts video. That one has unique sections dedicated to Silent Hill 1 and 3, which are really interesting. Click the video on the screen and I'll be sharing some more interesting facts about some of your favorite games. See you there!